Good afternoon and welcome back to this afternoon session. We are going to have two presentations before the tea break. We are going to have a presentation, a paper presented by Louis Kamau and Hassan Kinywa from the Nairobi University. And then later on, we'll be joined by Dr. Remy Kokanas, who will be joining us from Brazil. So those will be the two presentations for the first part of the afternoon. And then we shall have Dr. Ilaria after the break. Yeah. I understand that Laureen has technical issues. She will send her paper, so she will not be presenting because of technical issue. So thank you very much, and welcome to Professor Mugambi, who has also joined us online, and we are very happy and privileged to have you online with us, Professor Mugambi. So I give now the floor to Louis Kamau from Nairobi University for the presentation. Which is the PowerPoint presentation you can have also on your screen.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon once again. My name is Lewis Wedaka. Representing Dr. Hassan Kinywa. He is on his way also. And what the conference required us to bring out the aspect of human rights and human dignity and religion. And we embarked on examining human rights and dignity from a Muslim Christian perspective. That was what we embarked on. And as we were deliberating about how to work on the paper, the conference, we came to reality that when we talk about human rights, or human dignity from an Islamic perspective, there's a general biasness that we must accept with the society. One is that that general biasness is that there is no difference between Islam and human rights. It's actually something that has been propagated a lot with the development in technology, ICT, to an extent that we are seeing the propagation to an extent that some of us are growing knowing that there is no relation between human rights or human dignity, respect to life, way of life, and the religion Islam particularly. Not to say that the others are not, there's no biasness. It's also on the other end towards the Muslim Christian that there is that traffic. Another bias is that the relationship, there is a relationship between human rights violation and Islam, or human rights violation and Christianity. So both proponents, both believers on the fronts, two fronts, believe the other one is violating their rights, basic rights. So this one is a topic now from maybe an Islamic perspective, that we are starting on the foot on a society that majority are Christian, on a foot that there is no relationship. There is no difference in fact that exists between that. But that one is something we are now embarking on to prove that there is a relation between human dignity respect and the beliefs in Islam and beliefs in Christianity. And that's bringing me to the objectives of our presentation. The first objective is we aim to highlight the significance of human rights in Islam and also in Christianity. The second objective was to identify that emphasis that has been given to human rights, both in the basic documents in Christianity, that is Islam and Islam, that is Quran and Hadith, Bible. These are the fundamental documents that we refer when you're speaking to identifying our to be aim to achieve this objective of our presentation. And therefore, our relation, when we presenting this one, we try to look at are these elements identifiable within our society? Are the believers able to know that Islam believes in principles long before even the development of now, for instance, the American Constitution, one of the oldest, 1776, that captured aspects of human rights, the French Constitution. These are the old constitutions that have been there, the establishment. But what informed them? Was it the religion that formed the basis of this? Are we now denying ourselves by saying that there is not that link? That link is what our paper mainly tried to find out and identify that whether or not there is that link. So on that process, we first majorly identify the source of human rights in Islam. And that's why I say that Quran is one of the primary sources. The Hadith, which comprises the traditions and sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, provide this basis that it is true there was a relation, there was a strong teaching towards a call to the society to respect others, to allow others to live with that dignity and aspire the aspiration that we want betterment of the society. These are realities that the modern society has tended to move away from it. And perhaps we should question why is that so? Why are we now away from those principles that were set down, that were laid down in such long time ago? And what has pushed us to be in such why do we have now at the moment to come up and to push the government to introduce maybe the constitution principle that every person has the inherent right to dignity, respect? These are fundamental questions that we are now able to practice and back to the many years, over almost 2,000 years of the establishment of Christianity and Islam, that there existed those principles of human dignity, respect of others, respect of their properties, which one of the presenters said, they are the fundamentals in Sharia law, that you must respect the life, you must respect the property, you must respect of others, you must be tolerant, you must and care. And this has been pointed out even in our earlier presentation, the presentation earlier made by others, that the aspect of human rights, the aspect of human dignity as a basic principle in human rights has been based on the idea of tolerance, that we have to accept that we are living with others within society. And based on that, we are able now to question what brought about this violation of such basic principle that has been applied for many, many years. Is that one of the aspects that another community or another society is feeling being vulnerable, being excluded, and now they are demanding to be recognized, to be respected? Are we moving now from the understanding that these people now are aware of we need to be respected, we need to bring together the aspect of equality, fairness, and these are principles that create or support each other whenever we talk about human dignity. And therefore, they all link to one source. One source is low. Okay. Sorry for that. When we're talking about these principles and linking them to the scriptures, we are trying to say that it has informed the modern society of the need. But why are we seeing still the violation of the society? Maybe perhaps it's because of what we have been calling now the threat to other communities. Even when we talk about in the society, when we talk of violations of basic aspects of governance, like misappropriation of public funds, we are talking about not respecting other people's values, rights, in terms of maybe health, misappropriating funds to health. It all links up to the basic aspect of our society. So when you speak about human dignity, perhaps you should think probably on what aspects it affects society. I'll give an example. As a student of law, when in our current society, so many corruption cases are there. Day in, day out, we are struggling for aspects of governance, administration, corruption, and the basis of this, the basis of Chapter 6 of the Kenyan Constitution, we can see it reflecting or generally calling on people the right of others, to respect people, to respect what others are need to get from the society. And therefore, whenever you talk about human dignity, just link it up with the current or modern framework or legal framework that provides the protection of others, that we call tolerance. In fact, when you talk about the article of the Kenyan Constitution, that is more, we have almost copy pasted it with South African Constitution. It talks about just having fair administrative practices that will enable resources to trickle down to others and prevent the disrespect that is growing with the modern society. And this one also, as people or students of religion, now we are able to see it and link it as it has been a source long before even now the modern state are coming up. And therefore, the sources form the basis of it. And in Islam, Quran and Hadith are fundamental sources of it. And there are so many quotes from Quran and religious scriptures on human rights. For instance, we are talking about do not kill is a common principle that cuts in Islam and Christianity. When you talk about respect of life, to save one life is as if you have saved all mankind. Is a common verse in Islam that also you'll find its way in the Christianity. When you talk about how people cooperate, what we other presenters within the discussion have brought it as maybe tolerance. We are talking about an aspect that has been there long before the establishment of modern states. We are talking about accepting other people within our society, within our realm, that we are able now, for instance, in this unique platform, we are able to have people from different countries is because of the basis of the principle of cooperation, the principle of tolerance that is anchored within the framework of human dignity, human respect, that we are born all free and equal. It is just still be anchored within that framework. When you talk about the life, one who kills a man under covenant will not even smell the fragrance of paradise. In fact, you're putting now restriction. You will not even go somewhere. You will not. There is life after earth will deny you if you still violate the basic, the right, the respect other people deserve it. So if such provisions that are clearly spelled out in the Holy Scriptures are just scriptures within the framework of expanding on the principle of human dignity that is founded strongly in religion. So, the Islamic understanding of human rights, this is what many have said is, for instance, from the legal scholars, what they call natural law. It can go as far as the times of Saint Thomas Aquinas. They have instituted that there are certain rights that have been there. They are generally inherent in you. Most of them have argued that these rights have been there. They are not state given or government given. They are God given rights. And when we are talking about the dignity, the basic principle within any legal framework is that this principle has informed now the government or the state that when there is this social contract between now the state and the people, is that it is informed that the state will respect the people's right. The people's right to property, right to life, right to health, right to religion, worship. These are fundamental rights that are linked directly from the Holy Scriptures. Now, the modern states that are able now to be governed by maybe a constitutional framework that allows them to now identify which rights are there. When we're talking about, when our colleague is mentioning that Sharia, the 5 aspects of the society, maybe the aspect of life, we are talking about now right to life, relating it to dignity. We are talking about socio-economic rights, health, education. We are just linking it to the respect. We have to provide education because we have to. We want a society that is based on respect, that is based on a structured way, that no one violates the other people's spaces, and accept the tolerance and cooperation as a basic principle within or the basic elements within human rights. And therefore, in Islam, human rights is permanent, it is non-negotiable, and it is not government given. This one is God given. And therefore, we believe that, Islam believes that even those charters, we have, for instance, the UHDR, UHDR, we have the civil rights that were declared after World War, the socio-economic rights. All these drive their aspirations from human dignity that has been advocated long by the Holy Scripture. Another thing maybe you should look is now the comparison between now the rights, perhaps now in Islam and Christian, versus now the Human Rights Declaration. Particularly, we are talking about after the World War, Second World War. There are so many declarations that came out. The first one is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It gives just a basic framework, but you must note that the first article talks about the dignity, the respect, and still you can anchor it to to the Holy Scriptures, even the period of Magna Carta, the American Constitution, the French Constitution, all these came after the scriptures are already set aside, outlined that these are simple principles that must be understood. And therefore, if you look at the time, for instance, in the Magna Carta, King John, if I'm not wrong, I'll be guided by all my professors here. It's over 600 years before Magna Carta. The current, the one that formed the basis of United Nations, that has been accepted as a general document that give guidance to other charters, UHDR, is now almost over 1400 years, according to Islamic calendar, that the principle, adopting a principle that long before it has been there. And therefore, even though I'm giving that an historical perspective, you can easily relate and see that it is within us, or within the scholars are able now to reflect on this one and see that, and inform society that these principles have been there. The only challenge is now the implementation or the realization of those aspirations, and what has been causing the failure to aspire to a society that is based on respect to each other. And therefore, just to say, for instance, the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there are so many instances that you'll be able to see that he condemned any aspect that was related towards a violation of human dignity. For instance, he condemned slavery. People will not be aware of this, but he condemned long before. Even the longest before the slavery in Africa, we were discussing it, we are mentioning during lunchtime, the African perception of religion vis-a-vis the exploitation of the historical challenges that we have undergone, from slavery to colonization. Were the Europeans aware of the fundamental values or principle of human dignity within Christianity? Those are the questions that we'll be able to raise. But now, as a society that has been vulnerable to such exploitation, we have been able to see how the scriptures or the scriptures are condemned or aspired a society that is based on the principle of respect for others. And therefore, Prophet Muhammad condemned slavery, human dignity, treat everyone. He required the society to treat everyone on an equal ground. So, for instance, an Arab was not superior to an Arab, according to him, and an Arab was not superior to a white, and black man was not superior to a white man. And therefore, these are quotes from his teaching that we must aspire for a society that is equal, that is based on fairness, that is based with respect on each other. On a Christian perspective, so many verses are there that capture the principle. Proverbs, Genesis, from the word go, it outlines that mankind was created in the image of God, and therefore we see, if you are creating the image of God, therefore the respect I give my colleagues is still within that aspect of respect, or a society that is tolerant to each other. Discrimination, these are principles that even the modern day constitution, modern day framework that govern many states or counties has been crucial in terms of including others. So the principle of excluding others within the society has been founded within the constitution because of this aspiration within the scriptures that are already there. It sets the ground for us now to inform the society on how we should be guided. still on discrimination, we all demand services from the government or from any agencies, and therefore there is that tendency of maybe society being divided in terms of class. And therefore, we have seen for a long time that even maybe countries that Blacks during colonization, we were second class, even lower that class. There are certain classes were already created in society. And therefore, still the scriptures provide an aspect of that discrimination, that categorization of or discriminating people based on status, on their economic strength, is something that has been prohibited and has informed now the current society on the significance of having an equal platform. There are so many verses within that. Dignity in information of human being, Muslim perspective. Yeah. So these are still the verses within which we are able to identify respect for respect for human beings. There are so many verses we are able to capture it. Now, do we defend ourselves when these violations occur? So therefore, we, in terms of defending ourselves, because now we become vulnerable a society that has been faced with so much greed. Now it's where now we have to come up with frameworks or structures within maybe the society to come up with structures that will be able to prevent the exploitation for the most vulnerable in the society. And therefore, those are within now the discussion that we are able to come up, how will the church, how will the administration of the most prevent those people, the congregants from being exploited in whatever manner. So there are so many verses that are quoted on within the PowerPoint and how they have been advocated within the society. So in conclusion, just understand that these principles are within the Holy Scripture, Holy Quran, and IRDIS as the primary source in Islam. In the Bible now, we still have these principles captured well. Now, the only challenge now we are having as a society is it comes now to the realization of those principles. And therefore, what do we need to do in order to prevent the violation of these rights? Those are the fundamental now questions we should ask yourself, because this principle already has been set out. The jurisprudence within it has been set out. The biasness now is what we need to cure. Are we now starting in a platform that certain society will be able now to accommodate and have the tolerance aspect between the two major religions, to accept that both of these religions aspire a society that is based on the principle of cooperation, tolerance, and respect of each other? These are the questions that within the discussion or before the end of the day, we'll be able to come up with the answers for this paper. Thank you.
The paper, as just said, especially when it comes to scriptural references. Yeah, but I would like just to summarize in few points, just again to give us opportunity for 10 minutes just to interact with the presentations. The first point is that is the scriptural foundation of human dignity. Okay, scriptural both in Islam and in Christianity. This has been enshrined within our religious tradition, something to be reckoned with, and that we have to acknowledge. Yeah, the scriptural foundation of human dignity. The second point, you brought Christianity and Islam in dialogue. Okay, on this issue of human dignity. So you have brought Christianity and Islam in dialogue. So it's really an inter-religious religious dialogue perspective. Number 3, I think you've tried to show how secular constitutions on human dignity, stroke human rights, found their inspiration from the Holy Scriptures. Okay, that's the 3rd point that I've gotten. And the number 4, that the human dignity is God-given. Yeah, human dignity is God-given. But now, given the fact that all these are enshrined in the Scriptures, you pose a challenge, which is about the realization, yeah, of human dignity and human rights. Basically, how are they, being applied both in Islam and in Christianity? Yeah, because both religions aspire for a society based on tolerance, respect, and human dignity. Trying to show maybe what is being currently lived within these religions is not according to the Scriptures, right? So that's what I've tried to capture within your presentation, which I see as a biblical foundation and inter-religious dialogue perspective. So thank you very much. Once again, we give an applause to him. And then we have 10 minutes of interaction. I understand that Lorraine will be available. So Lorraine, if you're available at 3, we will request you to join us with your presentation online. So we have 10 minutes of interaction with Luis Kamau. Thank you very much. One question from the on-site and followed by one question online. Be available. So Lorraine. So if there is any question from or any comment from the floor here, and then we have maybe just okay.
Thank you, Louis, for this timely presentation. Just also very informative. My question is about the question we posed. While we realize that there has been, from the beginning, the value of human dignity in the Scriptures, both the whole Quran and in the Bible. Now, what has caused the failure in that we find Christians organizing for crusades, Muslims organizing for jihad, at the same time also.
Actually, mine is working. The problem is
all the awareness about human dignity,
to close and open again.
all scriptures. They began enslaving Africans, terrorizing them.
I'm in a meeting right now using it.
At a time where now Africans decided to form their own religious and political movements in order to react against those threats and dehumanization. My question is, what has been the failure? What has caused this failure?
So for the sake of time, if there is a question or a comment online, then we'll give Kamau the time to summarize everything as he concludes. So somebody online.
What has been the failure? What has caused this failure?
So for the sake of time, anybody online to react? Otherwise, if there's nobody, yeah.
It's running a few minutes late. So that question is still coming.
What has caused this? So, anybody online to react? Otherwise, if there's nobody, yeah.
It's running a few minutes late. So that question will still come in.
Yes, I think.
Anybody online to react? Otherwise, if there's nobody, yeah.
It's running a few minutes late. So that question is.
I think what has been the failure, we can trace it from a historical perspective. Perhaps look at the Berlin Conference that led to partition of Africa. What was it based on? So based on resources. So selfishness. There are certain group of people who felt they are more equal than others, and therefore they had to oppress others so that they can enrich themselves. And therefore, within that framework, they had to use all means. Was it to place in a position that your culture, your values are not better, is ours, and what we say is good, what you should adopt. So generally what has failed is that erosion of our traditional values and culture. Though we had our challenges, but we had our own ways. And therefore those resource trade issues within the society has been one of the failures in realizing the principle of respect within the world. So it is grounded more on maybe selfish interest, or a society that group of people who are with authority, because the people who came to maybe say colonize Africa are not the vulnerable ones within, borrow Professor's word, are not the vulnerable ones in Europe. They are lords. They are people who had access to resources. And therefore, to me, I will reason that they were amassing wealth for their generation, so that maybe as human population increase, there is a tendency the resources will be scarce. And that community or society that will have more resources, more gold, more natural resources exploited to their benefit, is a society that benefit. And therefore, this was maybe the basis of which the society was able to disregard the principle of dignity and focus more on self-preservation, maybe then allow me to call it, maybe self-preservation, to now extend that, let me amass a lot of wealth, let me be in a position to secure my interest first, and then the rest will come later. And therefore, maybe the failure has been the scarcity of resources, the potential of the resources being scarce, and therefore the failure to respect others. Yes.
Only one question from this side, so that we give Lorraine time to prepare herself if she's ready. But maybe my personal comment on the question of Dr. Sawe Munga is beyond. Yeah, it's how do we account for the fact that, human dignity is being violated in the name of religion, both Christianity and Islam. I think that was the core of not the consequences, yeah, but what how can we explain the fact that both in Islam and Christianity, human dignity has been violated in the name of religion? Yeah, I think that was the question, if I understood well, right? Maybe as you continue with your paper, that's the question maybe you may need, because your paper is it has an interreligious dialogue orientation. So how do you explain from that perspective? So I have my brother here.
It's a brief comment.
Yeah.
To me, it would be the failure of human beings is, I would address it simple as because we've been told from the presentation that if you look at Islam, the primary source of law is the Quran, which is the divine law. So when humanity fails, it means they deviated from the path that they were originally, that God wanted them to follow originally. They left the true path. And then now when you deviate from Allah's path, it means you'll go wrong in a lot of things because you can't guide yourself. That is why he brought prophets to come. And then remember, when we were talking about the narratives of the vulnerable, we gave an example. We said religion should give humans dignity. And if you read in the Quran, Allah has elevated the human beings far above all his creation. Why? Because number one, these are knowledgeable creatures. So when they come on earth and deviate, and as our brother said, suddenly we are seeing wars. These wars are being perpetrated in the name of religion, but they have nothing to do with religion. People are using religion for selfish ends. I'll give you the example of what is happening in Somalia. Can you really call that, or the problem that is currently in Somalia, Muslims killing Muslims, can you equate that to jihad? Can you really wake up in the morning and say Muslims are doing jihad in Somalia? No, that is all politics. That is about power, you see? So probably all these things are being perpetrated in the name of religion by ignorant fellows. This is my last point, and it's an example. Both Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, whom we follow in Islam, and Jesus Christ, the son of Mary, these two gentlemen are both descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So if they were to come back on earth today and tell them, go home, go to your grandfather, they'll go to Abraham, which means they come from the same house. It is the house of Abraham, one through Isaac, the other one through Ishmael. Then how is it then that their followers are killing each other? Maybe that is food for thought.
So that is another question, and that the challenge that you are posing. So maybe we might not have an answer, but it's a food for thought, as you have said. Yeah. And again, this is the interreligious character of your paper, which is the strength actually, okay, of your paper. So allow me to take Fatima online, please.
Thank you. Initially, I didn't have a question.
So maybe we might not have an answer, but it's a food for thought, as you have said. Yeah. And again, this is
There's echo.
You need something?
Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Don't know what's happening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Innocent, we cannot hear you.
Um, Hi, my voice is just repeating itself, so there's an echo. I don't understand. Okay. Father Innocent, you're muted, so I can't understand if I should go on or. Hi, my voice is just repeating itself. So there's an echo. I don't understand.
But we can hear you very clearly.
Can you try and disconnect the speaker?
Yeah.
So that.
Oh,
Yes. See where that.
We can hear you, Fatima.
Okay, so I will just yes, I'm a sociologist, so I come from sociology, and I know I'm faced by. Yes, yeah, I was saying that I come from sociology, and I understand everyone else is coming from theology. So my entry point into this platform is from a different path. I see religion more as a social tool. So my question, and as a social tool, it's something that evolves over the years. My question to the presenter is Bluetooth mode. This is not something that I would want an answer immediately, but just something to think about. That has Islam as an organized religion evolved over the years in East Africa? Because in other parts of the world, we see there's a version of Islam in different societies. Do we have an East African version of Islam, one that is either more acceptable or not acceptable in the society? And just something to think about.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatima, for that. Again, food for thought that you have posed to us. But there was a challenge because there is an echo of two gadgets being open at the same time. But we have taken also the food of thought that we have already also put before us. So once again, we thank Dr. Hassan and Louis Kamau for the presentation. And then, of course, you posed one question, challenge, but other challenges have been put to you so that you can also integrate those challenges into your paper. 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I'll take 1 minute as I've been told. I'll be very happy to answer the question, how do we account for that human dignity is done in the name of religion or in religion? I'll answer it in 3 answers. Number 1, it's ignorance. Number 2 is misinterpretation of the verses which are there in the Bible and also Quran. Because if you look at slavery, for example, it was before Islam, but some people misused it. And then the third one is the issue of not accommodating each other. So when the 3 are tackled, because we don't have time, then I believe the issue of human dignity in all religions will always be there, because all prophets aim to liberate human beings. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. So once again, congratulations. We applaud them for the presentation. So, Laureen, the floor is yours now.
Good afternoon. Hello, can I just confirm that you can get me loud and clear?
That's Lori.
Hello,
yes.
could you hear me?
Yes, we can. I can hear you now.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Okay, a very good afternoon once again, and thank you for, yes, I want to appreciate the, sorry, I want to appreciate the organizers for allowing me to make my presentation in this session. And basically this is work in progress, and I would be making a presentation on human dignity, African women's theologies and human dignity. My name is Lorraine Maseno, and I am a senior lecturer at Maseno University. I was asked to, in my presentation, I'm more interested in bringing in those aspects of dialogue between African women's theologies and human dignity. I will then, I shall begin by making a brief introduction, and then I will explain, I will give some key aspects of African women's theologies. Thereafter, I will proceed to consider the category women as a distinct social group. I will then try to interrogate the whole question of human dignity. I will use a particular framework that has been presented by, that has been made manifest, or can I say more pronounced, by the scholar Kilroy, and then I will be able to finish up by explaining in bit how these aspects of human dignity, the three frameworks that are given on human dignity, will closely tie up with African women's theologies. So, yes, so allow me to then begin. African women's theologies and theologians have contributed to theology in Africa. And basically they do believe that African women and the general population should live lives of dignity. And why is this so? Is because they are committed to the emancipation of women and to incorporating women's experiences in their analysis. So in this draft essay, I want to reflect on African women's theologies and outline how this will interact or be able to align with what frameworks of human dignity, which includes status dignity, social dignity, and personal dignity. So African women's theologies can be gleaned from different quarters, but one of them is within the context of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. And here I will not belabor their history. However, I will indicate that they voice their protests against sexism, and which is rooted most often within religion and culture. But also they are cognizant that before the coming of Christianity to Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, that the Christianity that was brought along was intertwined with colonial regimes. And so one of the circle leaders, or can I say mother of the circle, as so she's been named, Oduyoye, would argue that the arrival of Western Christianity was an attack on the African way of life because it collaborated with colonial administration and went on to propagate colonial violence. So through that kind of collaboration, it did legitimize patriarchy in Africa in a different way, and in that meaning that societies would be ordered hierarchically and power is given to men. This kind of exploitation, Musa Dube will argue that it denied African women and men within the colonial landscape, political, cultural, and economic autonomy. African women theologies will then proceed to consider speeches, songs, dances, and prayers, because they are, through this, women and men in Africa will be able to express their thoughts and conceptualizations of who God is, not necessarily in a literary format, but they will be able to make an expression of the same. So therefore, theology that is done by a number of women in Africa is by those who are not formally educated, because they express their theology through spontaneous lyrics, songs, and prayers. But at the same time, theology, African women's theology, could be done at a formal level by academicians, Sunday school teachers, guidance counselors, etc. What are there are different aspects of African women's theologies, but I want to zero in on three. And one of them is, what approaches do they utilize? They utilize feminist approaches in their work. And the second aspect, key aspect of African women's theologies is that they explore several themes. Some of these themes include community, they include Christology, eschatology, ecclesiology, hospitality, spirituality, community, empowerment, and liberation. I will not, within the time frame I have, I will not go to expound these themes, but it doesn't mean that these themes are unique to African women's theologies, because theology in Africa, African theologians, both male and female, do interact with these themes in one way or another in their work. The third aspect I would want to quickly point to, as we want to dive into human dignity, is that African women's theologies will then utilize several sources. What are the sources of African women's theologies? The Bible is one of them. And also, we say that they will also use stories and folklores and legends as a source of theology. So according to Oduyoye, Masi Oduyoye, that African women will accept stories as a source for theology. And at the same time, Africa religio-cultural heritage will provide insights for African women's theologies, etc. The Christian feminist movement and women's experiences and on. So these are some aspects that when we are unpacking African women's theologies, these are key aspects that would be useful in moving forward. Now, I want to also consider the category women. Why consider this as a distinct social group? And different scholars have given reasons as to why they could be understood or studied as a distinct social group. I want to zero in on one of the scholars. Her name is Pamela Dickey Young, and she says that if we are to consider women's experiences, let's begin with bodily experience, women's bodily experience. So for example, the bathing experience, the nourishing, suckling young children, etc., hormonal questions, surrogacy, etc., that these are unique to women's bodies in a way. And therefore, this gives them a different set of experiences, not that they are any special or higher than others, but these are unique to them. At the same time, a second reason, as we could say, what are these kinds of differences, is women's historical experience. Across the world and in different places, they have been oppressed or subordinated in one way or another. They have been caused to do similar work, but not on equal pay. And a number of them have not been considered as credible witnesses in different places or even allowed to vote. So that historical experience of women becomes in itself a source, or can I say a reason as to why we would tap from what it is they have gone through and use it to argue that they bring on the table certain experiences that are unique. Let me handle two more and then I'll be able. Third is women's socialized experience, how women are socialized as nurturers. They should not question others. They should find themselves serving others, etc. So in that kind of socialization, then it happens that they will carry along some experience through their socialization. And let's then finish with the question of the women's feminist experiences. And in this way, that we will say that in their experience of working against subordination and working towards female emancipation, then these are, in a way, they provide some distinct possibilities, even as they package theology in one way or another. So we want to also say that women's experience traditionally has been denied the recognition of other forms of oppression and other than gender, and an emphasis on the commonality. So we need to be keen not to have women's experience as, can I say, historicized or made to be constant throughout history, because it is easy to conceal racial and class differences among us women. And it could also render invisible the varieties of women in the world. So a solution towards this is that even as African women's theologies are being made explicit or being worked on, they are more localized, and a localized interpretation of those experiences then would be more accurate. I now move us to a framework of human dignity, and according to Susie Kilmaster in her book, Contours of Dignity, sorry, I think that was, yes, that human dignity can be mapped within a framework that includes status dignity, social dignity, and personal dignity. According to her, because then human dignity would be, we're speaking of how one is entitled to respect because of their status. And because we are human, a number of us then also will equate that all of us, the human, because you're human, then you are entitled to human dignity. However, in Kilmaster's work, having worked on human dignity according to her book from the 1990s, she argues that dominant approaches to dignity would be critiqued because they do not take into account vulnerable individuals whose dignity has been lost or damaged. So within this framework, she would say that she seeks to connect dignity to human experience. And the end product is that through the social status and personal arena, it is possible to bring out how human dignity, not only these strands are intertwined, but also to show or to take into consideration vulnerable individuals whose dignity, in other words, has already been damaged. Very quickly, in the three categories, personal dignity, here we say that is made pronounced in the healthcare arena. So in that arena, personal dignity is violated when the needed care from caregivers is withdrawn or is not satisfactory as per what the person would expect. So for the older people, as they get older, there's a way in which they would want, can I say, standards of cleanliness around them, etc. And if this is not achieved, then their dignity, their personal dignity is violated. So that is the level of personal dignity. If we move to social dignity, this is where society, within society, one is presented as having transgressed an important social norm. And because you've transgressed it, then the social contempt, you're viewed with, the person is viewed with social contempt and a lowered appraisal respect. So with social dignity here, we're talking of the community and how they look at you. And if you are presented or you have transgressed an important social norm within that community, then you could be viewed with social contempt. And social dignity will ensure that people have space to raise themselves in the eyes of the community. Now, quickly to status dignity. Here, the central instance of status dignity is human dignity, that because you're human, by virtue of being human, then you command recognition, or can I say respect. So as I come towards my end, towards the tail end of this draft paper, I would want to suggest areas in which African women's theologies meet human dignity face to face. And I begin, number one, with the open nature of African women's theologies. And because it is open to the extent that it allows theologizing by women who are not formally educated, that resonance, that emphasis makes a case that the dignity of these women who are not only doing Sunday school, but are full of hymns and lyrics, etc., that spontaneous possibility is also taken into consideration and is useful when we are looking at how African women's theologies will incorporate the status of these kinds of people, even allowing them to come on board. But also the circle's role in voicing protests against sexism. It is clear that sexism will defy personal dignity. And at this case, in this place where particularly women are shamed, etc., and not only personal dignity, but also at the level of the social, in the social arena where women can easily be shamed for one thing or another. However, a third area that I suggest, and so when the circle is involved in voicing protests against this, then they are working towards ensuring that women's dignity is not damaged, as it were. And lastly, I will indicate that another area that African women's theologies could meet human dignity face to face is that dialogue with male counterparts in the common areas where they work on matters, poverty, racism, etc., and political problems in society, because questions of poverty, questions of racism, they fly across the human dignity. And by working in these common areas with male counterparts, then they are in a way enhancing or ensuring that human dignity is kept or is maintained. So I want to finish with this conclusion and suggest that this framework of status dignity, social dignity, and personal dignity in relation to African women's theologies has brought to fore pertinent areas in which human dignity can be challenged or trampled upon. And so African women's theologies continue to look forward to a time when all shall command not only self-respect, but also respect of others in daily living, so that human dignity is for African women theologians central, because a person's individuality is also fulfilled in relation to others. Thank you very much. I stop at that and open up the floor for questions and comments. Thank you.
Maseno University. Applause for our presentation. We are going to engage 15 minutes with Lorraine, and then at 3:45, then we'll take Remy Cocanas from Brazil. just 2 words of summary. This paper has been about the gender perspective on human dignity, focusing on the role of women theologians and what they have written about, or their concerns about human dignity from the point of view of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. And at the end, because it's a gender perspective, Lorraine has ended up saying that there is a dialogue between female women theologians and their male counterparts on these issues on human dignity. So thank you very much, Lorraine. Now I give room for questions, clarification, maybe also points of consideration as you develop your paper. Thank you very much and welcome. So let us start from the room and then we go online. Yes, so
thank you, Lorraine, for this paper. I appreciate that you're one among the few practicing African women's theologies. Thank you very much. My question is regard to the girl child in Africa, particularly on teenage pregnancy and also child prostitution. What has women's theologies done with regard to protecting or addressing the problem of teenage pregnancy in Africa, as well as child prostitution? Because I understand that this is part of human dignity in Africa that is in problem. Thank you.
So we'll continue to take questions from the room or comments. And then Lorraine is nodding, so we'll give her time to answer all these questions. Yeah. Could be a question, could be a comment. Online. Okay, while we are thinking about questions and comments, let Lorraine answer that first question. Lorraine?
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for the question that has been given. And I'm being asked to speak to what women's theologies, or yes, what the circle has done towards questions of teenage pregnancy, questions of prostitution. I will begin by saying that my submission could be the tip of the iceberg and not the full rendering of the same. Many of the members of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians and a number of the women who are practicing theologians on the continent are involved in different ways, and I will want to use specific examples to bring this to light. I do agree with you that it is important to reflect on questions of teenage pregnancy and prostitution. So in one way, different scholars have made writings on academic publications on questions of teenage pregnancy in their localities and how this not only affects society, but also how the church can mitigate such. And a number of theses, master's theses and PhD theses in the public universities in Kenya do have aspects of how the church and theologians are looking at this. Now, a second area in which African women theologians are working towards these issues, and I have to say that there's too much to be done. It's not enough. What has been done is not enough. They have created awareness. I also do know of a team in St. Paul's, Kenya, Limuru, Kenya, who have done a project, or can I say they did write a proposal for funding to look into questions of sexuality, because then teenage sexuality and how is it that the church can be involved and engaged in such a manner. So there's some work being done on this. And I will also add that the question of gender and sexuality, or theology and sexuality, where we have course units that are not only sensitizing, but enlightening different in seminaries and in theological institutions, so that as we go out, as theologians go out, they are equipped on matters sexuality. So these are some of the areas in which, through that kind of sensitization, we are seeing African women theologians becoming agents of customary legislation in localities, but also modern legislation. So allow me to stop at that and say that for sure, there's much more that can be done, and it is our hope that this is reduced. The teenage questions of pregnancy and prostitution should actually be done away with, and across the continent. Thank you.
You have a question, Remy?
Yes, thank you, Innocent. Thank you, Lauren, for your presentation. I had a question about your sources and thematics that you presented at the beginning. I was surprised to hear that Christology was among the themes, but you didn't mention Mariology. And I was wondering if the figure of Mary was among the themes of your researches, let's say, and how maybe this figure could help Christian theologians to get into contact with Muslim theologians, because we all know that Mary is a figure, a crossed figure between the Bible and the Quran. I was just wondering if it was among your themes and maybe a kind of inspiration for your work. Thank you.
That's a point. If it's not in your paper, is another perspective. And the question of Remy is Mary is a figure where Muslims and Christians can come together and maybe reflect on the issue that has been addressed. So, Lauren, do you have something to say? 1 or 2 minutes on that? If it's a perspective that you could consider as you enrich your paper.
Thank you very much, Remy, for bringing this. I must submit that I did not exhaust. It is amongst sources and themes, and that this is one of the themes that African women theologians are working on, and 2 particular ones I would bring to Teresa Okure from Nigeria and Nasimiu Wasike have done quite some work on Mariology, and other women theologians. And so it is, yes, let me say it is also a theme, and it could be used, it can be unpacked in my wider paper. So thank you for bringing this up. Thank you.
Yeah, we bring in a different perspective to enrich our conversation. Thank you, Remy. Yeah, we are going to take 1 more comment, and then it will be a return of Remy to present his paper. If there is any more, 1 comment, otherwise we give, yes, somebody online. Yeah. Muhindo, look, that will be the last one. Luke Muhindo.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lorraine. Among the sources that you quoted being the sources for women theologies was the Bible. And I was also wondering when you mentioned that when colonialism came in, women basically suffered a lot, and prior, meaning that prior, women were very much respected. And to me, I would see it the other way around. Before Christianity, women were just subordinates in almost every aspect of their life. Traditional African basically did not kind of respect women's rights. So when you quote no culture, then saying no, when the Bible came in, that is Christianity, women were really, I mean, Christianity subordinated women. There would not, I can't so much believe that. I would say it should be the other way around. Women were liberated more when Christianity came in. And also when we read, second question would be on reconciliation between how the Bible and I believe in the Quran look at women. When we get into the letters of St. Paul, somewhere it talks of no women be subordinates to your husbands. The Quran also, basically Islamic religion, we can easily see that women like subordinates to men, even including going to mosques. So how would we reconcile all these, kind of the subordination of women by both Bible culture and I believe in Quran? Thank you.
We give Lorraine opportunity to just briefly give a response to that question.
Would I make a very quick one, please?
Okay, last one on this will be Professor Mary Gitui. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, for bringing up this very important issue. And of course, the circle has also been doing quite a bit on culture. I'm raising that because of my interest in cultural issues. What would be your comment about African women and culture?
So, Lorraine, the question is from a biblical perspective, but also from African cultural perspective. Just together conclude this conversation.
Thank you very much. Not easy questions, but we try to make an attempt on the same. So Luke is indicating that in his perspective, women were subordinated before Christianity, and that actually it is reverse, according to him, that Christianity did uplift women's status as it were. My response to this is that different scholars have taken on a continuum of positions. There have been different positions on the same. My take on it is to use specific examples. So if I take the position that women were not subordinated prior to the coming of Christianity, then I would need to demonstrate it. And we have the scholars who have gone into certain cultures and explained how women were not only gate openers, but were also significantly revered, etc. I only want to use one example to on this regarding the status of women after Christianity. So when the colonialists came and the missionaries came and opened up theological training institutions, then they admitted the male folk. They did not admit female folk for the work of to be theologians. So our initial theologians on the continent were. So if I use that specific arena to argue that the place of women was diminished to some extent because of their inability to access, and because you cannot be the preacher or you cannot be the pastor, then you would definitely have another position that is, yes, that you're not, all of you are not taken to be trained, as it were. So look, my take is that you are able to have that position, and if you localize it and give examples that that support that position, then it is acceptable from where I stand. However, if I give another, what example am I giving? Can I back it up from sources? And then I say, in this instance, then I suggest that women were subordinated. The other part you asked is about how we can reconcile the Bible, the Quran, and culture. Why all these are, it seems that women's positions, or can I say women have been subordinated traditionally in this. That is food for thought. I think it is, it can be open for input from our very well-able professors and my fellow colleagues. So allow me not to get into that, but allow me to quickly, my comment on African women and culture is that African women find themselves in various cultures, and when they are theologizing, they are keen to point out those aspects of culture that diminish their personhood, and they will not agree that we should continue with those aspects that are not, and we African women theologians are not saying that we should discard our culture totally, all of it. No, that there are those aspects that are quite, they enhance life and community, etc. But those aspects that are not, that dehumanize, that, can I say, damage human dignity, will definitely not be acceptable. Thank you. In those few minutes, over to the facilitator.
Thank you very much, Laureen. It has been quite Ilaria.
Yes, good afternoon. I have a very, very quick remark for Dr. Mazzino, because it's a very interesting topic she's talking about. And you were talking about missionaries who were subordinating women. But I would like to challenge you and really to examine from a gender perspective, what about the encounter between female missionaries and African women? So I think there is a diverse dynamics, you know, if you take seminaries and the priests on one side and female missionaries on the other side. I think the dynamics of subordination is not anymore there. Secondly, from an historic point of view, obviously, women has been discriminated in theology in the Western world too for centuries. I mean, we have to wait Vatican II for have a certain recognition of their important role in the church. So I will consider maybe both aspects from an historical point of view, but also this kind of encounter between women, religious women, African women. You were saying before a very important things that African women theologians, they gave the possibility to any woman to make theology, you know, to say something important from a theological point of view, regardless of her, you know, upbringing and education. So I think we still have to look further into the relationship between religious missionaries and African women, really from this point of view. What was, on a theological point of view, their relation? I think that be a different regard also from your side. But this is a very, for me, interesting subject of maybe joint research. Who knows? Thank you.
Yeah, I know that this is your area of research, the role of religious women missionaries, and you have done quite extensive research. But what you're asking for is maybe that collaboration in terms of research and also looking not only at women religious missionaries, but also women in general on the African continent. I don't think that there is any comment from Lorraine, just in the point of consideration as you are enriching your paper. So thank you very much. Once again, an applause for Maureen for this.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.
Good, thank you. So Remy, all the way from Brazil. I don't know what time is in Brazil, but welcome.
Abaria Subui. Abaria Subui. Siemchana apa. Siemchana apa.
Okay, welcome, Remy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Innocent, for inviting me once again in such inspiring projects. I would like also to thank Milka, who was kind enough to remind me to submit my topic on time, despite the various distances between Tangaza and my own personal trajectory. Because I was in Canada until Christmas, and I am now based in Brazil, where I should stay for another couple of years. And it is therefore from these double American perspectives that I would like to contribute to our reflection in the perspective also on the creation and the launch of an African Academy of Religions. So it is from this external point of view that I would like to discuss more precisely the religious motivations. I would like to share my screen, Innocent, if I could. If you can allow me to share my screen, I could present. I don't know.
So you can share now?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, perfect. So my topic is I would like to try to discuss the religious roots of slavery, and more precisely to discuss with you a very interesting period, let's say the age of the so-called great discoveries. Why? So because in the middle of the 15th century, Pope Nicholas V, who was elected in 1447, promulgated a series of bulls which allowed enslavement in various regions of the world and the loss, consequently, of dignity for so many people around the world. In 1452, he issued the papal bull Dum Diversas, legitimizing the slave trade. That legal charter gave European kings full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers and enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, and to reduce their persons into perpetual servitude. I would like to underline and discuss a few points here about, in particular, this bull Dum Diversas and the following bulls of the 15th century. The first point, which seems to me very interesting here, is the association of the Saracens and pagans under the same category of the enemies of Christ. The 15th century is traditionally understood or connected to the Italian Renaissance and the birth of the modern civilization, at least in Europe. But the terms of the bull remind us that it should be understood according to a medieval mentality. Let's take, for instance, the term Saracen, which appears in the paragraph mentioned earlier. In Greek, Sarakenoi, attested since the 6th century before Christ, designated those living in tents. So let's say the nomadic Bedouins who lived in the Arabic world until the 2nd century after Christ. But the sense of the term changed when it was to be used by Christian authors and especially some church fathers. For example, the words of Isidore of Seville show how biblical history dominated thought in the 7th century. I just quote him quickly. The Saracens are so called either because they claim to be descendants of Sarah, or as the pagans say, because they are of Syrian origin, as if the word were Syriginea. They live in a very large deserted region. They are also Ishmaelites, as the book of Genesis teaches us, because they sprang from Ishmael. They are also named Kedar from the son of Ishmael, and Agarines from the name Agar. As we have said, they are called Saracens from an alteration of their name because they are proud to be descendants of Sarah. We actually find traces of this form of narrative on the link between the Ishmaelites and the Saracens as early as the 5th century in Christian authors such as Sozomen's and Theodoret de Cyr, who were ecclesiastical historians. What is interesting here is that the apparition of Islam in the 7th century after Christ changed only marginally the use of the term Saracens. Saracens became one of the names given during the medieval times in Europe to peoples which threatened the southern frontiers of the Christian imperial borders. At that time, they were also called Arabs, Mahometans, Ishmaelites, or Agarines, as John of Damascus called them in his treatise De Heresibus, which, interestingly for us, he identified Islam not as a new religion, but just as a new Christian heresy. Other terms were also used as Moors, which refers to the Arabs and Berbers of North Africa after the Muslim conquest, and which entered in the Iberian Peninsula, creating, by the way, Al-Andalus. In short, the term Saracen is loaded with a kind of exotism and a clear xenophobia. In La Chanson de Roland, a very interesting 11th century text, it applies to the Basque, which attacked constantly the imperial armies in the mountainous corridors between today France and today Spain. Islam and Muslims didn't still exist as terms, as European words in the Western literature. The Crusades would change everything in that regard, as in many others. Somehow, the Crusades were launched as a response to the Byzantine desperate calls for help. In 1071, in Manzikert, as you can see on this map, the Byzantine armies were defeated by the Turkish pagans' armies. The whole Eastern Christianity was threatened. Antioch and Jerusalem were to fall rapidly, and the West had to find a response to such a crisis. The Crusades would, however, favor a new comprehension of the Eastern reality, and more particularly, a massive encounter with Islam. By the 12th century, Saracens had become synonymous with Muslim in medieval Latin literature, contributing also to an amalgamation of Islam with an exotic idea of the other. And I just remind you the fantastic work of Edward Said, which is called Orientalism, and which make a very important analysis of this this transformation of the use Islam in the Western literature. In short, European identity was forged in relationship with this other, this Saracen, this Muslim. It was true at that time, it might be still true today. But if we take an example of a Western language, let's take French, for example, Muslim is mentioned for the first time in 1551 and Islam only in 1697. Therefore, firstly, the use of Saracen in the bull that we have mentioned shows that it still belongs to a medieval mentality. And secondly, even if it's not designated as such, Islam is clearly the target of the 1452 papal bull. When it is promulgated in 1452, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II had completed his fortification complex on the western side of the Bosphorus, the last step before the seizure of Constantinople and the final collapse of the Christian Byzantine Empire. And as in the 11th century, the 1452 papal bull is therefore a response to the Byzantine emperor's desperate call for help. Issued then less than a year before the fall of Constantinople, which would eventually happen in 1453, the bull may have been intended to begin another crusade against the Ottoman Empire. And the next pontifical text would follow the same pattern and same objectives. And the famous battles and Christian victories in Granada in 1492 and in Lepanto in 1571 can be seen as late responses to the papal calls. This delay between the pontifical calls and the response of the European armies may be explained by the lack and the limits of the papal authority. The days of Canossa were long gone, and Pope Nicholas V didn't have the influence the Byzantines thought that he had over the Western kings and princes. Furthermore, the West was not united. France and England were both weakened by the 100 Years' War. Spain was still engaged in conflict with Islamic strongholds in Iberia. Any Western contribution was not adequate to counterbalance the Ottoman strengths. Venice could have had the logistical power, but its mercantile interests were at stake. Another maritime power would, however, played an interesting role: Portugal. This is a second point of interest of the text of the Pope Nicholas V that I mentioned previously. It is actually addressed to the Portuguese king Afonso V. Since 1415 and the seizure of the Moroccan port of Ceuta, the Portuguese were expanding a hybrid empire in the Atlantic world. By the middle of the 15th century, the Portuguese had created various settlements along the shores of Western Africa. Sponsored by Prince Henry the Navigator, Portuguese expeditions had already reached the coast of today Ghana and Nigeria. Significantly, Prince Henry was also the great master of the Order of Christ, the successor organization to the Knights Templars in Portugal. Again, we cannot stress enough the medieval and crusade mentality of the Portuguese expansion mechanism. As a kingdom, maybe as a nation, Portugal was forced by the military process of the Reconquista, which can be understood as the Iberian version of the Crusades. A series of wars, skirmishes, and violences between northern Christians and southern Muslims, the Reconquista created captives on both sides who were either ransomed or sold as slaves. The Portuguese crown extended that experience beyond the Mediterranean Sea in Africa. But it was not until Afonso V of Portugal responded to the call of Nicholas V for aid against the Turks that Pope Nicholas V agreed to support the Portuguese claims regarding territory in Africa. After the seizure of Ceuta, the Portuguese crown sought papal recognition of its expeditions against Morocco as a crusade. Similarly, the Crown again sought papal acknowledgement that their expeditions along the northwestern African shores were part of a just conflict. Those captured could then legitimately be sold as slaves. Was then the Church responsible for the enslavement of Africans? Nicholas V endorsed indeed the Portuguese project, and Pope Calixtus III reiterated the main points of Dum Diversas in Inter Caetare, a bull he promulgated in 1456. Once again, the Pope was attempting to raise support for a campaign against the advance of the Turks in the Balkanic region. Once again, European princes were slow to respond to the call. Once again, in the hope of gaining Portuguese support, the Pope recognized Portugal's rights to territories it had discovered along the West African coast, and the reduction of the infidels and non-Christian territories to perpetual vassals of the Christian monarch. A product of the Reconquista culture and mentality, enslavement was therefore at the very roots of the European expansion in Africa. It was not the only motivation, however. Portuguese expeditions in the southern seas were intended to compete with the Muslim Trans-Sahara caravans, which held a monopoly on West African gold and ivory. Aiming at the reorientation of the spice trade to Lisboa at the expense of Venice, they were also trying to find an alternative way to India, bypassing the Islamic territory of Egypt. Equipped with new instruments of navigation, the Portuguese paved the ways for the circumnavigation of Africa. Vasco da Gama was the first European to reach India by the Cape of Good Hope in 1498. In a Reconquista scheme and mentality, they were also motivated by the idea of finding the kingdom of Prester John, a legendary Eastern Christian power which was believed to rise in a counter-alliance against Islam. A combination of trade, Portugal, and revealing Africa to Western Europe, discovering indeed a mass of land and wealth which was not known to the Europeans and the Western Christians. I would like to mention here the fantastic works of Professor Radek Malinowski in Tangaza about medieval Sudan, and also of the French historian François-Xavier Fauvel, who in the Rhinocéros d'Or highlights this lost golden age of Africa, though unknown to the Europeans of the time. At the time of the so-called Great Discoveries, Africa was at the very center of this geopolitical game, which was linking the fates of Constantinople, Ceuta, Portugal and Congo, Europe and America. Because the so-called discovery of America and the following conquest of the New World are also a product of these expeditions. Let's think about the so-called discovery of Brazil, for instance. In 1500, in a tentative to follow the road opened by Vasco da Gama, Pedro Cabral got lost in the southern Atlantic Ocean and landed on the shores of today Brazil. Unknown at that time to the Europeans. The exploitation of Brazil was to become an important step in the colonial competition between Portugal and the other Iberian kingdom, Spain. The competition was so ferocious between the two Catholic kingdoms that the papacy had to play the role of referee. In 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued another bull called Inter Caetera, which divided the discovered territories between Spain and Portugal, and by this bull of donation, the papacy was endorsing the idea of discovery, which was to become a true political doctrine, very problematic today in the settler states, in particular in North America. The papal endorsement allowed also the transport of a certain culture of violence generated by the Reconquista in Spain and that transportation to the New World. Let's not forget that before being the year of the discovery of America, 1492 was first the year of the capture of Granada, the last Muslim kingdom of the Iberian Peninsula, by the Catholic Queen and King of Castile and Aragon. Let's not forget that 1492 was also the year of the expulsion of the Jews from the Spanish kingdom. According to the rulers of the time, Spain was to be an exclusive Catholic country. Full of violences and racism, the Iberian Reconquista was to shape the fate of the America and to color dramatically the relationships between the church and the indigenous peoples. In short, in the middle of the 15th century, Europe had issued a declaration of war on the world with the unleashing of an unprecedented wave of terror. These are the words of Arthur Manuel, a Canadian indigenous activist who passed away a few years ago. In his last book, Arthur Manuel sustained that a process of reconciliation should start here by the clear designation and denunciation of what he was calling the dark history. Addressing his fellow Canadians, he wrote, "On Turtle Island, let's say in America, as in Africa and other peaceful regions of the world, your European forefathers first inflicted sheer terror. You do not have to read very far to see the breathtaking cruelty of Christopher Columbus and the early conquistadors, of the brutality of many of the early settlers who offered money for our scalps or undertook germ warfare against our people. In Canada, the same ferocity of Pope Nicholas V's explorers resulted in the extermination, the complete genocide of the Beothuk people in Newfoundland, because it was said they were pilfering European fishing supplies that had been abandoned on the shore over the winter." History, memory, judgment. In a post-colonial perspective, the job of a historian is not an easy one. Was then, for example, the church responsible for the enslavement? This is a question all historians and people are facing today. For sure, there was an endorsement of the Iberian political and mercantile objectives. For sure, there was a connivance between the two powers, which took the famous form of the Padroado. In Africa, Sao Tome became the symbol of this combination between sugar, slave, and gospel, between exploitation and evangelization. The island was discovered around 1470 by Portuguese and became very quickly a sugar plantation, a home for slavery, and a central point for the evangelization of the continent. Because of this strategic position between Madeira and South Africa, the Diocese of Tome was established in 1534, which included the Portuguese-controlled or Christian areas of the south of Africa all the way to present-day South Africa and Mozambique. The influence of the island was also important in the Guinea Gulf. In 1570, for example, the king of the Wari people in Benin invited, for instance, Augustine missionaries from Sao Tome and had his crown prince baptize Sebastião, taking a Portuguese name. In the African context, however, because it clearly shows the ambiguities of the Padroado system, the most interesting chapter remains certainly the Congolese experience and the fantastic history of the kingdom of Afonso I in the 16th century. Afonso organized his kingdom on the model of Portugal, taking himself a Portuguese name, and tried to send his obedience, recognition, and submission in an embassy to the Pope in Rome. According to some Portuguese observers themselves, the Congolese king, or Manikongo Afonso, had been a wonderful apostolate for his kingdom, a very Christian king. His son was the first Black man to become a bishop, known as Bishop Enrique. Like Charlemagne, in another context, he had an ardent desire to bring progress to his people, and saw in the Christian faith a great opportunity to achieve this objective, concerning for justice and education. Afonso's reign had also been marked by his efforts to preserve his people from the slave trade and to ensure that his country remained independent of the Portuguese. But the Portuguese encroachment was to become unbearable, and a general return to the traditional religion regarding magical beliefs and polygamy weakened his project. Though demonstrating a great zeal with the publication of the first catechism in Kikongo and the construction of a seminary, the Jesuit mission failed also to show its distances with the Portuguese power. And from 1575, this ambiguous policy and military protection and mercantile exploitation towards the Congo turned to open military aggression with the help of another local population, the Yaka. This general insecurity forced, however, the church to create an independent jurisdiction for the church in the Congo region. Unexpectedly, the Diocese of Sao Salvador was erected in 1596, thus cutting the Congo off from the Diocese of Sao Tome and adding Angola to its jurisdiction. However, the new diocese remained within the Padroado system. The bishops had to be Portuguese. Desperate attempts were made by the successive Manicongo to reach Rome directly, but only the embassy of Don Antonio Manuel Nevunda reached the pontifical court in 1608 after a 4-year journey, and he died quickly after arriving in Rome. Africa was no exception in the world which was dominated by the Iberians. In the Portuguese Estado da India, there was also a clear connection between the presence of the Portuguese and the evangelization process. The Portuguese settled in Goa in 1533 and Macau in 1557, preceding the installation of Portuguese bishops in these imperial hubs between the Far Eastern regions and Portugal. The religious congregations followed these commercial roads. In the Americas, the Spanish Padroado followed the same pattern. However, there were also resistances which increased in time. Let's mention the famous career of the Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas and his participation to the Valladolid debate. This is not without echoing the condemnation made in 1537 by Pope Paul III of the unjust enslavement of non-Christians in his document Sublimus Dei. But the dignity was still to pass through conversion to Christianity. And as Tsetan Todorov showed brilliantly in his book The Conquest of America, The Question of the Other, if enslavement was denounced, colonialism was still praised as the best way to educate pagan peoples. Beyond the slavery issue, therefore, this confusion between colonization and evangelization was to become the core of the problem for the Church in its encounters with the non-European worlds. Plenty of examples exist in Africa, and I'm sure that Father Innocent would be able to give excellent examples of this problem of enculturation in the African context. But I would like just to give an American example, a North American example. In a very interesting book about the Christian enculturation in today Canada, the indigenous and missionary sister Eva Solomon analyzes this problem brilliantly. And I just quote her quickly. There is a clear difficulty for indigenous to integrate Christ into their perspectives of justice and liberation. The Amerindians, who received the Bible from the Europeans in exchange for their land, soon discovered that the biblical God of liberation is also a God of conquest. They cannot set their own liberation in motion without telling the whole biblical story and without knowing that when they became Christian, they were asked to adore the God of the peoples who invaded their land. Amerindians learned to read the Bible with the eyes of the Canaanites. I am convinced, says Eva Solomon, that in bringing the gospel to Anishinaabe people, so these people in northern Canada, early Western European missionaries confused the message of Jesus with the trappings of their own culture. Their goal was to save individual souls from damnation. In order to find a way out of this confusion, Eva Solomon worked all her life to introduce new images of Christ, and especially an Anishinaabe Jesus Christ, an indigenous Christ who was dancing with the indigenous, as in a powwow, as in a traditional dance in Canada. This indigenous Christ knows their oppression and suffering and continues to speak to them. He invites them to join the dance because he knows it and will heal them. So reconciliation and salvation have come through this enculturated Christ, teaching them the dignity of the person. But thanks to this dance, to this powwow, this is also the church which somehow gains her own dignity, gains her dignity back. This might be the sense of the last trip, the last pilgrimage of penitence, which was made by Pope Francis in Canada last July. In conclusion, I have to stress here a few points which I hope which could lead to a further discussion. First of all, there is no room here for an easy judgment about this difficult path at the root of enslavement and colonization. But I think we have to build the space for multiple and necessary questions. For example, was Christianity responsible for enslavement? It is indeed well noted that primitive Christianity, at least, didn't reject clearly slavery. But the career of Charles Lavigerie, for example, show that the association between Christianity and slavery is not also obvious. And what about the other religions? What was the role, for example, of the African traditional religion at the roots of slavery? The historical role of Islam might be more well known, but many myths and simplifications tear the reality. What I want here to stress is that we have obviously to try to distinguish between religion and ideology, between religion and politics, between religion and political systems and objectives. Secondly, there is, according to me, and I hope that you have felt that throughout my presentation, that there is a necessity to sustain a global, or let's say, a connected approach to, let's say, African history, for example. Ilaria Makoni might be aware of the important works made by the Indian historian Sanjay Subramanian, who was one of the first who advocated in favor of a connected and global history. And finally, exploring the religious fabric of indignity will then help to highlight some barriers which even today should be fought within religion to build back human dignity. This is another kind of recommendation for our debate in the framework, for example, of an academy, an African Academy of Religion. An academy should be a place of debate, but also of solution. Or let's say that the academy could be the necessary space where could be stressed, for example, the ideas of resistance towards the various forces of oppression in Africa and elsewhere. Okay, I just end that here. That's maybe too long presentation, and I just thank you, Asante Sana, for your presence. I'm not sure that everyone was still present at the end, but anyway, thank you so much, and I just open the floor for a debate if you want.
Thank you very much, Remy, all the way from Brazil. Yeah, and you have brought in a very interesting perspective on the debate. One is the issue of reconciliation of memories. Yeah, that's an important history and memory. And number two is about the need for inculturation. Of course, you did not go much into inculturation in Africa, but you gave some examples from
You're the specialist, Innocent, of that, so.
From Canada. So thank you very much. And of course, you have given us some already hints on what the academy could think about, and then points are really well taken. So unfortunately, I wouldn't, because of time, we're not able to engage into a debate because we still have also Ilaria. I just ask for 5 minutes just to stretch our legs, and then we as Ilaria prepares herself for the presentation, and that will be the last presentation for today. It's just been and again, we have also to take into consideration the time zones. Huh? Yeah. So here we are going towards 5. In Italy 3, and Brazil, I don't know what time it is. So yeah, but also that's an advantage of technology. We can also be able to converse across time zones. Eh? So we just
thank you so much, Innocent. I would like to thank you again, Innocent, for letting me participate to your project. Thank you so much, and I just hope to be able to participate to another one.
Okay, welcome. You are still part of us, Remy, and we really appreciate. Huh? Okay, thank you. So let us just take 5 minutes, and then we, as Ilaria prepares herself, and this is the last presentation of the day. Thank you. So Ilaria, hope you are getting ready. So Ilaria, the floor is yours. Okay. Okay, good. This is more or less just a kind of because most of us are linked also in a collaboration with the foundation. Just for the presentation. Our paper will be tomorrow. Yeah. So we didn't have more or less. Ilaria, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Just a second. Sorry. Can you see my screen? No.
Yes.
You can see my screen. Huh? Let me see. Okay. Perfect. So good afternoon. I think it's afternoon time at your place, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be part of this incredible circle of friends. This is something I would like also to underline that today Father Innocent asked me to talk about the steps, the milestones of the journey we undertook together. And I want to personally thank all of you. Many of you are in the room, many others are online, who really shared their free time with me and with us, believing in this project together. What is about? This is about the cooperation that we started, as this morning we have heard, some years back, together with the Foundation for Religious Sciences, FSCIRE, that I represent here today, and the Tangaza University College. I like to call it a partnership with a common vision. Why? Because from the beginning, both institutions strongly believed that we could learn a lot from each other, that the cooperation in different fields of research and of the academia could really help us broaden our research perspective and generally also the public discourse on religion, breaking also many stereotypes, not only about religion, but also about Euro-African actually partnerships and relations. So maybe I'm too optimistic, but I say that we are on the good way, on the path really to building a bridge between the South and the North of the world, and especially between different disciplines and approaches. Why do I say so? Because from the beginning, what started as a partnership between mainly two institutions, thank you also to some personal contacts, such as Remy Koganas and Father Innocent, it became a broader partnership, because thanks to Tangaza University College network, we could reach out to many of you who do not formally belong to Tangaza University, but like Professor Mazeno, Professor Mary Gateway, Professor Mogambi, and many others present here today. So we could really establish what we call a Euro-African research network. Most of you already know the Foundation for Religious Sciences, but before I go on describing a little bit the journey and the project we are carrying out together, let me tell you a little bit more about the Foundation for Religious Sciences, John 23rd. So we are an independent research foundation. Independent meaning we are not under the dioceses nor any other religious, the Catholic Diocese of Bologna, nor any other religious institution, nor university. We do have obviously academic relations with all of them. We have two main centers. So one is in Bologna, and this is a center that specializes on the history of Christianity and interreligious dialogue. And the second center was opened in 2018 in Palermo, southern Italy, and specializes on the history and doctrines of Islam. So I currently work between those two centers, and I'm in charge of a research project on Christianity and interreligious dialogue in Africa, and very happy in charge also of the partnership with all our African colleagues. In the Foundation for Religious Sciences, we are around 45 permanent researchers, meaning that we work permanently for the foundations, and we carry out what we call a collective activity. What does it mean? It means that each member of the foundation carries out a specific, obviously, research project according to its field of research, that, by the way, covers from history, theology, philosophy, sociology, political sciences, and so on. But we all participate in common pipelines. So we try really to share our knowledge with everybody. We have 13 main research pipelines and as many under research field of research or subtopics, from the history of councils to religious literacy, Christianity and interreligious dialogue in Africa, religion and politics, Quran studies, history and doctrine of Islam, religious pluralism, and so on. The main goal of both centers, Bologna and Palermo, that they are both under the direction of Professor Alberto Melloni. The main goal is really to promote research and knowledge about religion, because we strongly believe, and we know that our friends of Tangaza University College also share the same vision. We strongly believe that knowledge is really the most powerful antidote against closure of mind and integralism. The foundation, I said, is mainly a research foundation. So we have a very different research infrastructures, such as the Dossetti Library in Bologna and the La Pira Library in Palermo. Our catalogs are also online, and in the Memorandum of Understanding we signed with Tangaza University College, there is access also to our resources for the students. We have a scientific journal, which is called the Christianity in History, plus different series on Islam and interreligious dialogue. We are the co-founder of the European Academy of Religion. I will talk a little bit about it later. And we are the coordinator of the research infrastructure on religious studies, which is an international research infrastructure. Besides the research activity, or complementing actually our research activity, is the academic activity. We have a PhD, a doctoral program, which is the Alberigo School for Advanced Religious Studies. We have students from Italian and European universities doing research for their PhD with us. And we have a master program on religious pluralism, a laboratory for video history for schools. Then every year we organize different workshops, training programs for schools and teachers. And last but not least, we have the UNESCO chair on religious pluralism and peace, and we are the only one in Italy. So to go now deeper into our journey together with the Tangaza University College, as I told you, it started already in 2018, 2019, with very informal meetings, several meetings between myself, Professor Melloni, my colleague Francesco Cagnalutti, who's an expert of Islam, and Father Innocent, Dr. Malinowski, and many others of Tangaza University College. The idea was at the basis of this exchange was to share knowledge. So the knowledge you have about Africa and the religious experience in Africa, to share it with us. And from the side of Shire, there was really the will to break this very Eurocentric perspective on studying religion in general. Dr. Kokanas was advocating for a more global and connected history. So I think this was also our aim, to bring on board the African perspective on religion globally. So on the 4th of February 2020, we organized on the premises of Tangaza University College, and thanks to the generosity of Tangaza University College, a public forum on variation and encounters of religious experiences in East Africa. We had about 20 scholars from different Kenyan universities present that day, and we discussed the topics and possible contribution of a book that I'm happy to say, after so many 2 years of delay because of COVID and other financial problems, we will be able to publish this year. Because our partnership was born mainly as an exchange of scholars, what we did is 3 years in a row, so 2020, 2021, and 2022, I coordinated a panel with African colleagues to bring the African perspective to the European Academy of Religion. Every year, the European Academy of Religion publishes an overarching theme, such as religion and politics, religion and change, and so on. And we were always present, with some of you also, to this panel, presenting a different perspective. On the academic point of view, this is the 3rd year that we have quite a success with our specialization course, organized especially together with the Church History Department of Tangaza University College, on context, sources, and historical critical methods for the study of religion. Some of you, and here we have also Professor Mugambi, gracefully accepted to do some lectures for us. The course accepted also European students, and from the beginning, the feedback we had from our European students was, finally, it's never too late to learn something, and attesting the importance really to bring more knowledge about religion in Africa, and to bring also a different perspective, the African perspective, on the study of religion in general. So we are very happy, and we will keep on doing that. One highlight of our partnership was the G20 Interfaith Forum that took place in 2021 in Bologna. Bologna was the host of the G20 and the Foundation for Religious Science. The title was Time to Heal, Peace Among Cultures, Understanding Between Religions. Thank you also to our friends of the Institute for Interreligious Dialogue, Father Innocent. We were able to present also the African perspective of this very important theme. Last but not least, this last September, together with 6 universities of Sub-Saharan Africa, Professor Sakuba is also representing one of our partners, with his KwaZulu-Natal. We responded to a call of Erasmus Plus on virtual exchanges in religious Euro-African dialogue, because obviously all the projects we have together, we have many, many others, but they are impossible if we do not have the money to carry them out. So this is why now we are engaging with some funding proposals of the European Union. There will be another proposal that I will submit now for a master and PhD programs together with our consortium universities. And finally, we hope, or I personally hope, to be able to present again this coming June, a panel together with Tangaza University College and other colleagues on the new theme of the African Academy of Religion, which is religion from inside. And I think this topic of the religion and human dignity that you analyzed during this Zero conference, let's say so, of the African Academy of Religion will be the perfect theme to present at the conference. So obviously I say our, but this is your project, the African Academy of Religion, but because of the friendship we share with you, we support the project, and from the beginning we try to give some inputs about the organization of the European Academy of Religion. Please understand that this is not an attempt to make you copy the structure of the European Academy of Religion, but maybe to give you some information how it worked out for us, as I mean the Foundation for Religious Studies. How could we succeed in launching the European Academy of Religion? As you see, this platform, which is mainly an exchange platform and an interdisciplinary exchange platform about religious studies. So from any field of research, from history, theology, anthropology, important is always that the theme is related to religion. So from every field of research, from any religious or non-religious background, so there is no discrimination. And what is also very typical for this European Academy of Religion is that young researchers and well-established scholars, they have the same place, meaning that this is actually the place for young researchers to illustrate the results of their work. I make an example. This year, we will have at the European Academy of Religion an internal panel of Shire about killings in places of worship. Shire is developing a database. We have 4 PhD students working on that, and they will present at the panel. So this is also the platform for young researchers who otherwise wouldn't have too many chances to be invited by other, to speak in other official conferences. So legally, the European Academy of Religion is an association and is based in Bologna. Bologna and the Foundation for Religious Sciences still have the coordination of the European Academy of Religion. As I said, the mission of this European Academy of Religion is really to stimulate and to promote knowledge about religion, because we believe that only in this way we can also promote peaceful coexistence and avoid religious illiteracy. Regarding the most important milestones of the European Academy of Religion, it started in 2017 during the Zero Conference. FSHIRE had already developed a very important database with about 1,800 contacts. So we sent out invitations to all our colleagues around the world. And that's the time where the statutes of the European Academy of Religion were approved. Finally, the European Academy of Religion was also launched under the patronage of the European Parliament. Father Innocent was also mentioning Jean Figel. He did the opening ceremony for us. We had the support of about 300 universities and research institutions all over the world. So this is European because basically it was born as a project subsidized by the European Commission, but it connects all universities. We have partners in Africa, we have partners in the Americas, both Americas and in Asia. In the first conference, or the Zero Conference, we had about 500 delegates and 25 mentor universities. There were universities helping us out in the organization and also in the grants. The main idea was really, as I told you, to allow young researchers to come to Bologna and to present their research. One of the main problems is always for young researchers the lack of fundings. So these mentor universities were giving out some grants to allow a certain number of researchers to come for free to Bologna. As I said, about the organization of the European Academy of Religion is a collective association. So every member, if you pay the membership fee, you are automatically a member of the European Academy of Religion. Then we have an executive committee that there are 9 members. They are elected every 4 years. Are elected every 4 years by the members' assembly. So each member of the European Academy of Religion has the right to vote and to present also candidates for the next 4 years. We have a Secretary General, Treasurer, Vice President, President, and the Auditor. What is the main purpose of the European Academy of Religion? The main purpose is obviously to organize at least once a year the yearly conference. The conference takes place during 5 days, usually 1 year in Bologna, because Bologna is the legal place and the birthplace of the European Academy of Religion, and the following year in another university outside Italy. So this year will be St. Andrews in Scotland. What is very important is that the very aim of the Academy is to encourage collaborations for the development of academic research and training programs within and outside the European borders. So there is a very keen interest also on what's happening in Tangaza today from the side of the European Academy of Religion. Another aim is to support proposals on the use of research fund and structures, especially, as I said, for scholars who are at the beginning of their careers. So there is also a certain network that is important for all the members. We should also facilitate the cooperation between its members, meaning the member of the Academy of Religion and the European institutions, especially when we apply or you apply for funding proposals. And finally, promote relations with non-European associations and institutions that share the same goals. Obviously, also the same vision, so that we share also with Tangaza. How finances it's financed, the European Academy of Religion. There is a common fund. As I said at the beginning, we received some money from the European Parliament. Then we created a common fund, and the common fund is primarily made by the contribution of the members, and it can be increased by membership fees. So each time there is the European Academy of Religion to attend, you pay membership fees. There are also the possibility to receive contributions by individuals, public or private organizations, donations, and so on. Last year, for instance, the Academy of Religion took place in Bologna, and we received, especially for our young scholars, some consistent donations by the Archbishop of Bologna, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, who's a longtime friend also of Africa. And finally, any income of the association's business and surpluses. If we organize paying courses or so on, all the money we receive goes into the fund of the European Academy of Religion. What is also very attractive for usually young members of the Academy of Religion is the possibility to have a mentor in the European Academy of Religion. So we can patron scientific activities such as seminars, conferences, and other events. Obviously, the initiatives should be scientifically sound, this clearly connected to religious issues. But as I said at the beginning, there is no priority given to history over theology or to theology over sociology of religion. Each field of research is treated equally. So, so far about our project together. I hope I gave you some inputs for the conversation. I tried to really summarize all the journey we have done together until now. I'm very grateful for that, and I thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Ilaria, for this presentation, which is also part of the conversation. Yeah. We did not just start from nowhere. Yeah, there is a history behind, and the history is about the history of cooperation beyond the borders. Yeah, and most of those who are actually, this was the invitation to the conference was nominal. We did not send out a general invitation. We're sent to individuals. Yeah. So it's a kind of very closed, because we wanted really to bring our minds together. And most of those who have been invited are also part of the network of the Foundation for Religious Science. Yeah. So the bonds and the family is really growing, and we want to see how we can grow together. So these are just ideas of the foundation. And of course, when we come on Thursday, to chart the path together, we'll have also all this in mind, in the background. And thank you very much, Ilaria, for already proposing a possible panel, and that panel could take the same theme. So probably what was presented here will be part of the panel. So it's, we are not going to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. So we are just waiting for that time to come, and we will be glad to participate once again in St. Andrews in Scotland. So the day has been very, very, very long. I hope very instructive. Yeah, because here we have also students in Islamic studies who are part. So we said that it's also very important, as you said, bringing in young scholars. Yeah, to see what is happening there, what is happening in the world, and so on. And hopefully, some will pick up the interest into the academia on not only because most of them are here for pastoral, but some maybe may take up the interest in taking the academic path. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all those who have been present online. So this is the end of the first day. So we still have the second day, and we shall conclude on Thursday morning. Yeah, good. We had asked Father Peter to start with the word of prayer. Now I'll ask Sister Joan. Yeah, we must be gender sensitive. Sister Joan will also close the day with the word of prayer.
So let us pray. Let us remember that in the presence of God, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We thank God for the gift of this day that is ending. We thank Him in a very special way for all the presenters that presented today, both online and on site. We've learned a lot. And as we go back to our different places, let us carry what we heard it today, try to implement it in different ways, waiting to carry it again or to come back for tomorrow so that we can be able to have a flow that can take us during our time as we implement the cry for the world of human rights and human dignity that is being violated all over the world in different ways. We pray for all those that are suffering and they would like to be liberated from their different abuses, that the good Lord will be able to redeem them. And we also pray for each other. In a very special way, pray for Dr. Hassan's new baby, our family members, and our communities. And we ask this through Christ our Lord.
I would like to end without thanking the Secretariat of IRDIS and the technical team from Tangaza. These are students in social communication in Tangaza. So thank you very much for the help. Yeah. So, tuonane kesho. Good. Asanteni. Yeah.
Asanteni sana.
Yeah, asanteni.
Asante sana.
Asanteni kushukuru. Good. So for those who are here, we can with a cup of tea. Yeah. No, all. I mean here in this room. Okay, good. This one is no. Can end it.